So in this video, we're going to talk about constructing explanations. The learning target is that I can construct an explanation with a cause and effect and a possible mechanism. So when I first started planting tomatoes in my garden, as we've talked about quite a bit so far, you're probably going to get sick of me talking about my tomatoes by the end of this unit. So I planted these tomato plants, and there was a lot of different things that I was thinking about as I was planting these tomato plants and trying to figure out how to make the best tomato plants possible and how to get these things to really grow. And so at first I thought that it was all about getting the right amount of water on them. And so I started watering them a lot, right? Something that I can test out. And then you start thinking that maybe it is having a lot of sunlight. So you got to put them in a certain place in the garden. And if you put them in the right place, then they're going to grow really well. And so I thought that that was a way that my tomato plants would grow better. And then another way that I thought tomato plants grew really well was I thought that I could put fertilizer. Let's just say this is fert. And I was pouring fertilizer on top of these. So one of the explanations that I had for why tomato plants grow well is to put fertilizer on them. Or is that they take fertilizer, they need nutrients. And so I had all these different explanations for ways that tomato plants grew well based off of things that I had seen in the past. I had seen my parents set up sprinklers on our garden at home, and I've seen some really good gardeners. My grandmother put fertilizer all over her plants, and she always had this specific way of putting fertilizer out. And so that's how I came to the conclusion that plants needed fertilizer. And then from science class, I knew that plants go through photosynthesis, and so I thought that a good way to make sure that plants would grow well is to put them in full sunlight. And so I had all of these explanations on how to grow plants well based off of things that I had seen in the past. And that's what you're going to be doing here. Because as we try to learn more about the world around us, we've got to be able to explain what we already think about the world around us before we start to test things out. Once I know what I'm thinking about how plants grow well, these explanations that I have for what I already know about plants growing well, then I can start to test some of these out. And that's going to be the next stage after we get past constructing explanations. But right now, we're just going to go through a process of how do I explain what I know about something before I start testing it out. And that's going to be our constructing explanations. So I got this template off of wonderofscience.com, and it's really going to help us to construct our explanations for these phenomena that we see before we start to actually plan investigations. And it's going to be 5 different steps. First, we're going to describe the phenomenon. What are we seeing? Then we're going to brainstorm possible causes. And then we're going to identify a scientific cause. We're going to describe a mechanism. So how is this actually happening? And then we're going to be able to formulate a research question from this. And this is how you are going to be testing out your phenomena and explaining your phenomena in class. And so let's start off with this first one here as we go into what the effect is. So this is where we are describing the phenomenon. And in this part, this is what we're seeing. So you've seen a demonstration in class. You asked some questions about it, and so you are going to be describing what you are seeing. In my example, I was talking about tomatoes growing well. So I'm going to use the example in my effect of I see tomatoes, fruit growing. Okay, so I've seen people grow tomatoes before that were able to bear fruit. And so that's going to be my effect. This is the thing that someone cannot dispute that it happens. Someone cannot argue with me that tomatoes grow fruit. If I saw a tomato plant and it had tomatoes on it, I could definitely say with no doubt that there is fruit growing on that tomato. And so this is the effect that I'm going to describe. For your demonstration in class, you're going to be putting down what are you seeing that someone cannot dispute with you about. And so that's my effect. Now, in our second step, we're going to be looking for possible causes because we're going to be trying to explain why tomato fruit grows. But first, we have to identify different causes that could be causing this. And so I'm going to put down some of the ones that I said before. We have water, we have soil type, we have sun, we have fertilizer. I could put, what are some other things that could cause tomato fruit to grow? Oh, we could put the type of tomato. And let's just go with those. You guys are going to come up with 7. We're going to stop with 5 right now so we can keep moving through this. But those are all possible things that could cause tomato fruit to grow. And so it's really important to have a lot of different causes, because the key behind having a really good cause and one that we're going to use is to just come up with as many as possible and then come up with the best one. You don't have to wait to see one good one. You just have to get a lot of okay ones out, and eventually a good one will come out with you. And then so once we have a bunch of causes, once you have your 7 causes or your 5 causes or however many you can think of, you're going to be coming up with a scientific cause. And remember, a scientific means that it's measurable, it's testable, it's researchable, it's something that we can actually go find out about. And so the one that I'm going to use here is sunlight. I think that is one that we could actually test out, research. We could go find more about this. So I'm going to say that sunlight causes tomato fruit to grow. And now I've got to go on to my next step, which is describe a causal mechanism right here. So I'm going to zoom in so I have a little bit more room to write. And so a mechanism is a way or a method. This is really how is that cause creating the effect that we're seeing? How is sunlight causing those tomato fruits to grow? That's our mechanism. And so now, based off of things that I've learned in science class before, I could say that photosynthesis causes tomato plants to produce sugar in the form of glucose, which causes them to grow. Right, so the photosynthesis causes tomato plants to produce sugar, which causes them to grow. Kind of a simple mechanism, but it is a way that sunlight can cause those tomato plants to grow. And so we're going to zoom out to see how far we are on our explanations now. Remember, this is going to be, you're going from an effect, something that you are seeing, to a cause, something that's causing what you're seeing. You're going to identify just one of them, and then you're going to be looking for a mechanism, a way, a method. How does sunlight cause the tomato fruit to grow? And then from there, you're going to be formulating a research question. And this research question, as we write this research question, you're going to be thinking about what is something that I could either go look up online, go find in a book, or actually something that I could test out. And so one way that I could do this is I could be thinking about testing out what effect sunlight has on the tomato fruit growing. And so a research question that I could put up here is what effect does sunlight have on, let's say, tomato fruit growth? And so that would be something that I could actually go and test out. What effect does sunlight have on tomato fruit growth? I could build an experiment in order to test that out, and I could be seeing how much of an effect sunlight has on tomato fruit growth. And I could also adjust this research question from where it's at right now, and I can come up with something that's even more specific, even something that's more measurable, and that is what we're going to be getting into in your next lesson, which is on planning and conducting investigations. But right now, we're really trying to focus on narrowing down our effect, giving a cause, a bunch of different causes that we can brainstorm, and then identifying a scientific cause. And then we go into the mechanism. And the mechanism right now is your best guess at why or how that cause causes the effect. So this is your best guess. And if you've heard the word best guess before, you could also think of this as your hypothesis. The causal mechanism is your best guess hypothesis. And so as we adjust this mechanism, as we learn more about the way that this cause causes the effect that we have, that's where we're really learning more about the natural world. And as we learn more about different mechanisms that can have different effects, then that's where we're really learning to better understand the world around us. And so the goal of this entire exercise here is to be able to come up with this one causal mechanism right here in one sentence, going from an effect to a cause to that mechanism. So you should be able to define or to construct an explanation using a cause and an effect and a mechanism.